the newest green innovations, research the behavioral patterns of animals, and examine how the arts are being studied today. You'll find it all on the Academic Minute.
Listen every weekday afternoon during the KSJE Evening News at 5:30. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them, whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury. San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Ten minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday morning, July 29th. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Micklin, and thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM here in San Juan County, New Mexico. In Durango, Colorado, you can listen to us at 103.3 FM, and of course, anywhere, you can always listen at ksje.com. Also, good morning to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program streaming live to the KSJE YouTube channel and Facebook page. We're glad that you are with us, everybody. Coming up, our continuation of our Back to School series with local school superintendents. And this morning, Farmington School Superintendent Dr. Eugene Schmidt is going to be joining me in the next few moments to talk about Farmington School's Back to School plan. Of course, it is all online until at least Labor Day, and then after that, the school district has another plan for students and teachers and parents and staff. We'll be talking about that in depth this morning, beginning the next few moments right here on KSJE. Then later on, Dr. Mike Hadaba is going to join me from the Encouragement Lab, and Dr. Hadaba has a bit of a challenge for us all from the lab this week, so I hope you'll stay tuned and join us for that coming up this hour at 8:50 a.m. right here on KSJE. Next hour, Mick Hess is taking us roving with the arts. Of course, it's our weekday classical music program. Today, selections from Richard Strauss on a special 90-minute version of Roving with the Arts on KSJE today. And that takes us to 10:30, right on Four Corners. On Wednesdays, our local and regional author program. And of course, Tracy Hales-Vass is speaking with author Elizabeth Jacobson this morning about her book, which is called Not Into the Blossoms and Not Into the Air. You'll hear more about that coming up today at 10:30 right here on KSJE. Don't forget, you can always check us out on Twitter and Instagram in addition to Facebook and YouTube if you are a social media person. And let's check in on the weather forecast. It's going to be warmer, sunnier, and drier for the next several days. Today's high 94 in Farmington with lots of sunshine, 60 and clear overnight. Mostly sunny tomorrow with a high of 98 on Thursday. It'll be 96 on Friday, 95 on Saturday, mid-90s again Sunday and Monday, and lower 90s in early next week. Overnight lows again in the mid to lower 60s. Well, joining me now to talk about the Return to Learn program at the Farmington Municipal Schools, Superintendent Dr. Eugene Schmidt is back on the program with me. Dr. Schmidt, good morning.
Good morning, Scott, and good morning to all of those Beacon on the Four Corner fans.
That's right. Thank you for joining us again. We appreciate you being here, and we've been talking to all the local superintendents this week about their plans for the fall, and of course things are changing sometimes day by day, moment by moment, but I know you had and worked with your staff to have a plan in place. And then as of last week, when the governor came on, that plan maybe got delayed a little bit because we all know there's now no face-to-face learning until at least after Labor Day. And so how does that change what you had been planning for Farmington schools?
So I appreciate you've used the word change, and that's a great conversation starter. I think about New Mexico weather, Scott, and they say if you don't like the weather, wait a few minutes and it'll change.
That's right.
I'm feeling like, in terms of return to learn plans, if you don't like the answer, wait a few minutes and it's bound to change. Because
exactly.
It has been a really fluid process. And let me give a shout out to all of my Farmington staff who proved to be increasingly adaptable as we look at this idea, that idea. We have a great relationship with the public education department. and their willingness to work with us on different kinds of designs. And so as we look at what school could look like, we're going to know a lot more later after this broadcast on Wednesday, because I'm meeting with my cabinet to review all of those different options. But we are migrating towards return to learn that comes either as an at home or an at school. And so I'm going to give you some numbers that we've been running. We have surveyed 9,422 students via their families so far.
Right.
And what we're finding is 45.4% of my kids want to come back to school. We have a population of about 32.7 that have chosen to stay home. And then I have 21.9%, Scott, that haven't made up their minds yet.
Okay.
And so we are, as we try to build a plan, we are looking at, again, the options of at school or at home. And you're going to have either program will offer 5 days of learning. Now, the governor, just this last week, added a new little wrinkle to everybody's design, and that's that she has asked that schools plan for a larger percent of their students beginning the year at home. But in that design, she has allowed school districts some creativity in how might we bring back small groups of at-risk kids. And that's what makes this 45.4% number so interesting. Later on this morning, I'm going to be talking to my cabinet about what might it look like if my elementary kids, grades kindergarten through 3rd grade, for those that choose to return to school to learn, what if I could do that in small groups? And so we have a tentative plan we're going to try and sort through that. And let me use Animas Elementary as an example. If in that population of 45.4%, 200 were kindergarten through 3rd, and I could break them into small groupings of 100 in the morning and 100 in the afternoon, might I be able to bring a larger number of kids back? And so then what would happen, Scott, is around the 8th of September, the governor is saying that then your hybrid model could take effect, and a hybrid is now I can take those 3 classes of 5 and move it back into 1 class of 15, again with that online learning option available to those kids. And so we're really going to be doing a lot of brain mapping over the next rest of this Wednesday and on into the rest of the week. But we're to the point where we have an idea of what online learning could look like for the masses, and what a start or a jump start for school might look like for a smaller, most at-risk population of elementary K-3 kids.
I see. And I guess, Dr. Schmidt, that explains maybe why the district was so wanting to learn from parents what their plans were, I guess, to try to count on the numbers of folks that or kids and students you might have to accommodate back in your buildings then, right, if they weren't choosing the online option from home.
Yes, and I appreciate that question because, again, about 20% of our people have not made a choice, but there's an additional 1,000 kids who we have not connected with. And I know that through your work on the radio, you've tried to help me impress upon people the importance of updating their phone numbers and email addresses through PowerSchool just so you can be found. And so
right.
There is a moment in time when, if you've not made a choice or we've not gotten a hold of you, that then we will assign you to the at-home option pending positions available in the at-school model, knowing that even as we design these plans, so I'm going to go back and throw the word change at you probably a couple of times in this hour, but we are seeking guidance from the Center for Disease Control, the New Mexico Department of Health, certainly our guideline in partnership with the Public Education Department. We want to bring kids back. We want to bring them back safely, as do our staff. And so a lot of planning about school safety we can talk about perhaps in this hour. But
Sure.
I'm really interested in bringing the kids back. And we're hoping that Public Education Department will work with us on some of the models that we'd like to explore.
Understood. Well, and Dr. Schmidt, if you would just a moment, talk to me a little bit about special education students, because they are a special group of their own, of course, and I know there are specific plans for that group of students in your schools, right?
Yes, and we care about all our kids, but sometimes you care more for the most needy. And so we are looking at how might we focus on that return to learn for our special ed population, especially in that August 18th to September 8th. How might we bring especially those K-3 kids home? And so that's a conversation we'll continue with the Public Education Department in seeking guidance. But do know, as families of special needs children, that we care for you, and we're going to try and get you back in school. And that may be in a 1 to 5 as we try to understand how best to bring kids back.
All right, fair enough. Want to ask you too a little bit about Country Club Elementary School. I know folks in that neighborhood have been watching and waiting and being patient and watching and waiting as some of the construction projects wrap up over there. But you're telling me this morning that everything looks to be on schedule?
Yes, and there are 2 different buildings actually under some summer modifications. Country Club is the one I've chosen to profile because you can see things that are going on outdoors. And this is about an $8 million systems upgrade. You might call it renovation, remodel, but there's an extensive amount of work being done inside, outside. For the viewers, you'll see 2 pictures. One is of a new joining wall that connects the cafeteria with the main building, and that includes new bathrooms. That is all sheetrocked in. There's a lot of internal work going on, but also there's a lot of, I'll call it envelope wrapping. In the new systems design, the old 1950s windows, those big blocks of windows are coming out, and the district will be putting in more wall space that becomes learning space inside the classroom, with smaller windows for what we might describe as ambient light. Again, the purpose behind the envelope is that school security is becoming more and more important, and we can block the outside looking in through a new set of more wall, less window, and that will be a continued practice across the district. But it's an exciting time for Country Club. For those who have most interest, the building is scheduled to be completed. Construction will be done in time for those kids who get to return to learn by August 8th or 18th. And the other school that we really haven't talked a lot about is McKinley. And I didn't put a picture of McKinley because that is all inside work. But that's going through a whole renovation for those McKinley parents. When you bring your kids, the new entrance will direct you right into the office. So you have to check in and be seen, be counted, have your background check taken care of before you get to go into the building, before a parent might be able to go in and turn right or left and skip the office process. And so we're excited about the new changes that are going on in both buildings. Both will add a great deal of new life, and new aesthetics. And, things like heating and ventilation at Country Club, new lighting. A lot of technology upgrades, Scott, is taking place. Kids will come back with overhead projectors hanging from the ceiling, not on the carts that maybe you and I were used to when we were kids. But a whole new learning environment that will be well received and opens up new space and sight lines. Will be a lot of fun.
Very good. And I know there's a lot of security thoughts about that too, right? Of having your folks, your visitors to a campus go into the office first and not be able to just wander into other parts of the school. This is all part of the world we live in these days, right?
Yes. In fact, there's almost two different kinds of security. One, to make sure we know what kinds of people are coming into the building through the use of cameras and buzzer systems to access into doors, and even running your driver's license through a background check. But in the new world, it may be that we restrict visitors even more tightly because of concerns for coronavirus. And so we haven't fully amplified what our intent is yet, but as parents and visitors planning to maybe come later in the school day, it may be that we have you drop your kids off at the entrance, and then we ask as parents that you go home. And so we're still thinking about what does COVID look like in San Juan County and the city of Farmington as school opens. We know that there's this red, yellow, green that the state seems to operate by, and right now that the state seems to be in a red zone. I wonder that San Juan County, who seemed to have their COVID early, is now maybe a yellow migrating itself towards green, but the governor has chosen to make us a state, and we appreciate that. But there may be a time when visitors to schools are restricted more tightly just because we want to keep kids, we'll call it a bubble if I can, we'll bubble our kids when they're in school.
Right. Sure. Well, and Dr. Schmidt, it sounds like, too, the way things are going, you mentioned that, right, the state maybe is in a red designation because of the high numbers of infections and spread in other parts of our state, maybe not necessarily here locally. But I guess that then begs the question back to you, of course, is as the plans are right now and you reopen your school buildings and students start coming in after Labor Day, I suppose, there's a possibility that things could get shut back down again after a few weeks, a few months, and it goes back to 100% online, perhaps, if the virus does what the virus has been doing.
Yes, and so let me say that our community can help us if you're following the medical guidelines: wash your hands, social distance, wear masks, don't make unnecessary travel, and if you do quarantine, you can help us get back to full student participation if we just behave well. And so that would be my ask of the town is, let's, in these 14 days or 20 before the start of school, let's make a real concentrated effort to follow guidelines and let's make the community a better place and safer by just following those simple guidelines. So let me go back a little bit more and say that we're always interested in the safety of kids and staff at school. So I appreciate the opportunity to share some of those thoughts. Busily this summer, Ted Lazowitz is our Chief Operations Officer. We have ordered many, many sheets of plexiglass that we are turning into these little plastic isolation zones. And so to help with social distance, we're going to be putting plexiglass, little box kinds of things that separate kids in our elementary, because sometimes kids forget to wear a mask and they cough or sneeze or something. So some of these kids, at least for these first couple of weeks, we're going to be experimenting with these plexiglass isolation shields. Visitors to the office, all the office staff is now plexiglassed in. So we're really trying to be safety, health conscious for kids in the classroom, as well as the people who come through the office. And in addition, we'll spend a lot of time trying to help kids follow rules. And a rule might be elementary kids always learn how to line up.
Right.
Somehow lining up is something we forget at the middle school or the high school. And so we're going to try and remind kids of the importance as they move about, and there will be movement, from class to class. Certainly kids will walk down to the cafeteria, get a grab-and-go lunch, go back to their room. So there is going to be movement in the building. And so we will be asking, just as I go to the grocery stores in town and I see arrows on the floor, trying to help with how might we best socially interact. We'll be asking that of our kids and staff to not just mob their way down the hall, but follow some line-up protocols that we think will help ensure the safety of our kids. So a lot of good thought has gone into every classroom. Will have those little sanitizing stations, and we'll be focusing on wash your hands a lot, but mostly it's up to kids. And if you're going to come back to school, Scott, you're going to be expected to wear a mask, whether it be a parent, a visitor, a student, a staff member. I will say that we have permission from the public education department for those who really have a difficult time with a face mask, that will get you into a face shield. And then we're also working on the possibility of microphoning our teaching staff. So even if they wear a mask or a face shield, we're going to try and get them in some kind of microphone voice projection that makes it easier for our kids to hear.
Oh.
It's going to work, but we need the families' help and understanding that wearing a mask is that new part of our world.
It is for the moment. That's very true, Dr. Schmidt. And I guess, again, that kind of makes sense for folks who are coming back in and following, as you mentioned earlier, if we all follow these, as the governor would say, COVID-safe practices, that may allow the numbers to get back down and the things to start opening up again like we want, like dining rooms and schools and churches and all those things, I think, is what folks are aiming for if we all work together. Let me ask you a bit about school sports, Dr. Schmidt, because I know that's another big topic. And like everything this year, things are a bit different when it comes to school sports in the fall. And we've already heard a little bit about how some seasons are going to be shifted and others are going to be delayed. And I know you're working with your athletic directors and coaches about all that schedule, and students are watching and waiting, as well as their parents, to find out what's going to happen there.
Yes, and so I appreciate when we run these parent surveys of coming back to school or not, we leave opportunities for parents and kids to make comments, and the social, emotional, behavioral side of school is important to some as education is to others. They want to be around kids, and one of the opportunities to let kids work together is in sports and activities and different kinds of clubs and activities. But I really appreciate the patience and understanding of parents and my student athletes for all of the changes that have taken place, because even the sports calendar, Scott's probably changed 3 times since we closed down the school last May. But this latest iteration, because we have moved the in-person back to school to the 8th of September, that means that we have also pushed back the start of the sports season. Now, what parents, I think, should see if they're looking at the monitor is fall sports are scheduled to start around September 28th. And people will say, well, that's curious, because aren't we starting school on the 18th? And so we're starting school on the 18th of August as an online,
right?
But the way that the state is phasing it back in, the guidelines that they're giving us, is K-5 kids will be the first to return. And so by the 8th of September, if COVID continues on some kind of downward trend, we'll be bringing back the pre-K kids up to grade 5 for that first week of start of the school in September. And then in some kind of phase, whether it be by weeks or days or a couple of weeks, the middle school kids will come back. And the present plan by the state is that high school kids will actually be on campus back around the end of September. So that's why there's September 28th started. But there's a lot of important things for our community to understand. We do offer the full slate of 13 sports over the course of the year. But because we've pushed the start of fall sports, and in this case, fall sports are going to be cross-country, golf, and volleyball to the 28th, soccer and football have been moved to the spring, which is an interesting solution.
Right.
And so then that pushes baseball and softball into May and early part of the summer, June. So the thought behind this sports season is You don't have to pick your sport because we have fall sports beginning in September, but push some into the spring. Spring sports are now pushed into late spring and early summer. So if you were a person that wanted to play soccer and then play softball, you could do those. And so I like to plan, and it's going to give kids a chance to do more. And what we hope for, Scott, is that the season will be playable because we are all in that green or yellow zone, and we can allow kids to gather in bigger groups than just 5.
Gotcha. Well, that sounds like a workable plan, Dr. Schmidt, and it sounds like the way these seasons are scheduled too. That again, that most athletes will have a little bit of a break in between. It might be a short break, but a break nonetheless in between the different seasons of the sports that they're playing. Isn't that the idea?
Yes, and I don't know if you're sharing the maybe that bigger calendar, that would give us a chance just to see how intricate this planning has to be, because we have to accommodate or account for varsity, junior varsity, the freshman teams, 7th grade, 8th grade. There's just a lot of intricacy to make this work. And as you say, it is important we give kids a chance to have a short break. And I don't want to call it a Corona break, but we, let's give kids a chance to, take a week off and get back to their academics,
right,
refocus, and then start the next sports season.
Certainly, and we're showing the calendar right now. It's a little hard to see maybe on the screen, but every colored line is a different sport and how it's been scheduled throughout the different months of the year. And we're right now in looking at December. As we start the new year in January, we can see a couple new sports starting up, and it will keep scrolling through to kind of show how that is supposed to work. And as you mentioned, when we get into maybe end of February, we've got 4 sports going on at the same time. And so that's kind of how it's all been figured out. And this, of course, goes back to the good work from folks where at the NMAA, isn't it?
Yes, and I would say that for my seniors, you're going to be playing sports after you graduate, and that's an exciting new concept, and so we will watch. We will have the confidence that my community will social distance and do those things that are just good health sense to give my kids a chance to come back and be students and be athletes.
Very good. Well, Dr. Schmidt, I want to ask you a bit about a couple other things that are going on. You talked a bit about some construction projects and things like that. You mentioned, too, about food service, that I know when folks are back to face-to-face, students will be walking down to the cafeteria, as you mentioned. Before that, though, is there still a plan to distribute meals remotely to students who are at home, who maybe their families depend on some of those meals from school?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because it gives me a chance to give a shout out to the food service and the transportation department. I think, Scott, the community will be just pleased to know that we served over 1 million meals.
Wow.
To kids last year, breakfast, lunches, over 1 million meals, and we certainly have that same plan. Once kids were sent home around March 13th, we all remember that day with, some immediacy, but we were serving over 4,000 meals a day, even with all those kids learning from home, and it was a great credit to the operational staff, Janelle Miner, Judy Pruitt, certainly Billy Hewish from the transportation side, to figure out a way to deliver those many meals as grab and goes out of school parking lots, by bus on bus stops. So those things are going to continue. So for my families who have chosen to learn from home, I still want to feed you. So you will be invited to do a grab and go drive-through at schools, or that we will continue with the current plan that bus will deliver meals to remote sites. So it's going to work. We're going to get fed. We're going to get educated, and we're all going to get through this.
Very good. Just have a few minutes remaining, Dr. Schmidt. I know you want to talk a little bit about graduation rates and graduation analysis from some of the data that you've been able to pull together from 2017 through 2019. And so as we look at some of these things on the screen, just a moment, talk to me a little bit about what the numbers are showing us. Obviously improvement, I would say, and improvement across the board, it looks like.
Yes, I'm really pleased with the data that shows that kids are staying in school. And there are many reasons for that, and certainly that parent support is important. And for every graduate, they have a friend or two, whether it be a classmate up and down, above them or below them. But every kid, has somebody to encourage, coach, and say, hang in there, stick with it. But graduation rates have been getting better, and in fact, Farmington's numbers are approaching the most they've ever been in the new way of counting kids. In the late 90s, Scott, a GED counted as a diploma. But somewhere around 2005 or 9, the state said, no, it's actually going to be a diploma. And so we are reaching numbers. Farmington High at 87.6, for those who are not viewing this, was their 2019 class graduation rate. PV right behind them at 85.3. So as a district, we were 79.8, almost 80% of kids graduated out of that senior class in the year 2019, well above the state average of 75.
Right, and I was just going to mention, Dr. Schmidt, pardon me for interrupting you, but for Farmington at 87.6 in 2019, from just 2 years earlier, 2017, it was a 67.9. So just for folks who don't see that, our radio listeners, I think that's a significant jump from that number.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because something, a stronger focus, and you got to credit kids, because kids say, sometimes being in school is tough and I'm going to struggle through. But also I think that it shows that teachers are doing more to build relationships and find other innovative and creative ways to keep kids engaged in learning, that they see a purpose to stay in school. But literally, you're right. Farmington High with a 67.9 up to an 87, that's 20 points. That's literally hundreds of kids. And so it's a great credit to the community, to the kids themselves, but to the teachers who are trying to be more creative and embracing kids. So let me talk about some things that we learned. One of the things that we're learning, the data seems to suggest that we will need to focus more on kids of mobility or transient nature, because as we try to understand who's not making it, it is the kids who are highly mobile. And so we need to figure out ways to connect with kids that come in to the district and maybe don't find a place for themselves somehow in the system and then drop out. So mobile kids, we need to figure that one out. And we're also learning that there is a need to focus on the young men. Our young women are graduating in numbers higher than our young men. And so if we can figure that one out, that will be an immediate jump. And for our community who may remember, some years ago, the district had a charter with an online school called New Mexico Virtual Academy. That school in particular had a high mobility transient rate. It in the course of a half a year, it might roll through 250 kids replaced by 250 more, always capped at 500, but the turnstileness of the school is something that will be a legacy for us. We're trying to reach back to those kids and help them find a connection to a school. New Mexico Virtual, as you recall, Scott, these kids came from all over the state. These were, right. I think of the whole 500 population, maybe 17 were from my own district here. So these were kids from all over the state that were looking for an online place. Well, now every school in the state has an online place. And so I'm hoping that we can help these kids go back to their resident communities and get reconnected. But it is that transient thing that if we can just figure that one out, our graduation rate will probably grow by 5% as a district, which is huge.
That school, you say, is going to drop off of those charts, those lists, right? And so that would increase the numbers, I guess, from everyone else, because they were around in the 40s, I think, if I look at it. And for folks
Yes.
who are watching, again, that's the NMVA we see on the graphs that we are displaying this morning. So that's where that comes into the equation.
Yeah, those kids are from all over the state, and good for Farmington that for those 7 years we helped kids from all over the state. But right now our energy needs to be on our kids, and so we have parted ways with the virtual academy. We have ended that charter, and we're moving on and just taking care of our kids and trying to understand how can we build those support networks. And so let me give a shout out to a number of people, because other things we learned. Many of us know Catherine Abeta, for example, from United Way, Nancy Shepard, who retired from the college but actively involved in Leadership San Juan. These people helped create a graduation coach program. And in the last 2 years, we think 60-some kids just from Farmington High School made it to the diploma graduation finish line with help from a significant adult. And so we're hopeful that, Catherine, if you're out there, or Nancy Shepard, if you're out there, we're hoping that you will help us this time figure out a way to begin that graduation coach as a virtual program.
Very good. Well, Dr. Schmidt, there's certainly been lots to talk about this morning, but I'm afraid, as usual, we are out of time. It happens every time you and I get together. We run out of time talking about all these things. But thank you.
You're a good person and just a wonderful asset to our community.
Well, thank you very much, and I think right back at you. And we appreciate your leadership and talking about these important issues with me every month. Your commitment to our audience is much appreciated. So stay well, and we will talk again in about a month's time.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Thank you very much. That is Dr. Eugene Schmidt, the Superintendent of Schools with the Farmington School District, my guest here on KSJE. This program on KSJE is supported by Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation, providing a competent, innovative, and caring team of professionals to serve wealth management, trust administration, employee benefit plans, retirement planning, and estate settlement needs. Find out more about Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation at 505